Mary Frances Postapak. I'm the Vice President for Economic Development and Entrepreneurship. And it is my great pleasure this evening to introduce Dr. Marcia Welsh, President of East Stroudsburg University. Since her arrival on campus, Dr. Welsh has led the university charge to create an innovative and entrepreneurial learning environment for our students and community. She continues to challenge us to be the best we can be. And she has institutionalized the fact that without exception, it's students first. Dr. Welsh's energy and strategic leadership style inspires us all to continue to take risks and to embrace change. The President's Distinguished Entrepreneur Speaker Series is just one of the many initiatives launched under her leadership that introduce our students and our community to the world of entrepreneurship. A world filled with unimaginable career opportunities and life-changing adventures. Ladies and gentlemen, and ESU warriors, please welcome me in joining in introducing and welcoming Dr. Welsh.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here with us this evening and for joining us for the third presentation in the President's Distinguished Entrepreneur Lecture Series. This series was launched in April of 2017 in an effort to engage the campus and the community in conversation about innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm very happy to say that this series has exceeded even my expectations. With capacity crowds, stimulating discussions, and students, I've had students come up to me and say, I went to that lecture the other night. That's the best thing I've been to since I came to ESU. It was incredible. And I know tonight will be exactly the same. We launched this series with two ESU alumni, two ESU graduates, Dan Dizio, CEO and founder of the Philly Pretzel Factory, and Dr. Sam Needbala, serial entrepreneur and CEO first of Orasure and now of Cryo Concepts. And he's going to get rid of all my age spots. That's his next challenge. So I'm working with Sam. This evening we're honored to have with us an internationally recognized entrepreneur, Steve Sommers, owner and president of Vicon International, a $100 million flavor and fragrance company located right here in East Stroudsburg. Now, I keep asking him, will you give me the scent? Will you give me that scent? Because I sell the ingredients, I don't sell the scent. So he sells the ingredients. So my description of his company, he's the guy you go to when you open that can of chicken soup and that little piece of chicken is floating on the top, but it smells like the whole chicken is in the can. That's Vicon International. That chicken smell, that's him. So he does a lot with scents and fragrances. He has a passion for learning and supports education through his philanthropic efforts that include creating scholarships, funding honor programs, and supporting the construction of science laboratories. He has a tremendous passion for baseball and is part owner of Rail Riders in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, which is part of the it is a Yankees affiliate, so very big on baseball. Tonight's program features an up-close and personal conversation with Steve, who's going to share his story of building one of the industry's fastest-growing companies. You're going to learn why Yippee is his company's mantra and what advice he has for students who want to change the world. I will have the pleasure of moderating this discussion as best I can. He's a little uncontrollable. So as long as we all know that up front. We're going to do an interview format, and we'll be taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and we'll try to accommodate your question. So Steve said anything goes, so this conversation should be very interesting. So please join me in welcoming Steve Sommers to the stage. So, Steve, are you ready?
Well, just a quick comment. I know that we're going to be here for about an hour, which is 60 minutes. And thinking about 60 minutes, I don't know if you guys saw 60 Minutes recently. So I kind of feel like I'm Stormy Daniels and you're Anderson Cooper. So bring it on, Anderson.
All right, you ready? Okay, starting from the beginning, you grew up in Queens, which is a very diverse, not exactly simple living community. So how did growing up in Queens, New York impact you?
Well, I would say growing up in Queens, I'd have to bring up the analogy of if anybody here drive in New York City? Show of hands, New York City, right? What's it like driving in New York City, right? Anything goes. So I lived in New York City for the first 26 years of my life, and quite honestly, anything went. And it is a super competitive, fast-moving, juggling type environment. And I honestly say that it was probably the best starting ground for me from the standpoint of knowing what the world is like out there. And I grew up in a family of 6, so from the moment I got up and had to compete to get into the bathroom, to walking out to get on the bus, and if I stood on the wrong place on the corner for the bus, everybody got on the bus, and I was still left out unless I wanted to hang on the outside of the bus. And it was the same thing getting on the train, and where did you stand, what did you do? So everything in my life was kind of looking at how do I get the competitive edge? And the people that know me, when I'm, even when I drive and I go places, I'm always looking for that competitive edge. So I think that growing up in an environment like that, where also anything happens, so that since I moved out of New York City and I come out to a quieter environment, Northwest New Jersey, things, when things happen, people are surprised. They're like, Steve, why are you not surprised? It's like, from where I came from, this isn't such a big deal. So from the standpoint of growing up in an environment where there's 7.5 million people, so much happening, fast movement, it kind of got me ready for the adventure that I was ready to go on.
So in Queens, you grew up headed toward a more non-traditional path. You evidently were studying to be a Catholic priest as a young man. So tell us a little more about that. What headed you in that direction?
It's Holy Week, Marsha. I don't know what to talk about.
You have to talk about it. It comes with the territory. It's this Britney Spears little...
amidst a family of 6 and trying to differentiate yourself, I grew up in a religious environment. My mom had a lot of faith, and I kind of followed that. And she showed me the importance of what God can play in your life. And I think I wanted to be somebody that was relevant. I wanted to be somebody that had purpose in my life. So at that time, people looked up to religious, people looked up to priests, and I said, wow. Maybe that's the path I like to go on, and maybe I could make a difference in affecting people's lives by being the best priest that I could be. So I decided my high school years were spent studying to be a priest. And I think it's been, honestly, a lot of people will come to me and say, I guess you kind of realized, I don't know, that path wasn't you, or you discovered girls, or something like that. And quite honestly, for me, it was the most disappointing aspect of my life was looking in my heart and realizing that God was not calling me. Because in the Catholic faith, to become a religious, it's a calling from God. And when I looked in my heart at that point in time to go to the next level, that call wasn't there. And quite honestly, I still feel like I have a vocation, and there's a lot of things that I do in my life, and I think we can talk a little bit more about that. But the effect of those 4 years of my life are immense.
So you spent most of your college career both at St. Joseph's and then at St. John's, both Long Island, and I got to know the Sisters of St. Joe's better. So I know that they're incredibly good schools. St. Joe's is much more a commuter school, no residence halls at that time, and so in those institutions you chose chemistry. Why chemistry?
Well. I go back a little bit to my high school years to think about kind of the mindset that I had. And I was a baseball player, and I remember my coach telling us one day, and I used to steal a lot of bases, and the coach took us down to third base one day, and he said, hey guys, I'm going to teach you, second is one thing, third is another thing, but stealing home is really the easiest base to steal. And we're all looking at the coach, and for you that know baseball, pitcher's on the mound, he throws the ball, you got to beat the ball to the plate as you're running. And everybody's like, are you crazy? So he showed the technique, and next game, I'm on third, all the signs are there, and I said, what the heck? I flashed him the sign, I'm going to go. And pitcher, goes into the windup, I beat it, I make it. I make it again, I make it again. And I made it in my high school years 18 times that I stole home. And I thought about that, and the confidence that I grew there. Now I'm, going to St. Joseph's College. We have our first day of sign-ups for majors, and I was kind of like a beach-going guy at the time, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and it's August, and I'm telling you the way how it came to pass. And I looked, and the education line was like 50 deep, and the business line was 70 deep. And there's nobody on the chemistry line. I'm like, why is nobody on the chemistry line? A friend of mine that was also going to St. Joe said, dude, whatever you do, do not study chemistry. It is super hard. I stole home 18 times, so why not? And I actually signed up for chemistry. And to follow the story just a little bit, I'm 2 weeks into my classes, and the department chair meets me after class one day and says, Steve, I'm looking at your transcript. You're a chemistry major in college. You had no high school chemistry. I'm like, don't worry, I stole home 18 times. I got it. So she said, well, our first test is next week. We'll see how you do. And I think I got like a B+ or A-, and the rest is history. Yeah.
So talking about sports, so obviously, I agree. Talking about sports, you're a sports fanatic, and you are part owner of the Rail Riders. In high school, you were an all-city baseball player. In college, you played basketball. And so how did your involvement in athletics affect your professional development?
Again, I think the competitive aspect, the discipline that's required to be an athlete, knowing how to win, which is really important, to win with grace, but also the lessons that you learn in losing. And in life, and especially in business, there's a lot of ups and downs. And I had a lot of good coaches in sports that always said, and you hear these all the time from professional coaches, to be successful, you have to keep it in the middle. You have to, don't get too high when things are good, and don't get too low when things are bad. And actually, I was just down in spring training, and I had an opportunity to meet Mariano Rivera. And Mariano is, for those baseball fans, is the most successful relief pitcher. And I was asking him, I said, down here, Mariano, working with the players, I mean, what are you teaching them the cutter? You teaching them all your techniques? And he said, no, I'm teaching them how to fail. I said, what do you mean? He said, because the difference in a pitcher being super successful in a game that's 162 games long and 6 months long, you're going to have games where you are going to walk off the field the loser. And as the relief pitcher, it's you. It's you and the whole team. But it's been so many players that have great talent, make the major leagues, but can't overcome a loss, can't put that behind them. And I think that's a lesson as well on the business side. When there's failures, so many people just buckle down and cave in, versus being able to understand. And that's what you learn to me in sports is, if you go out there and you give everything you have, and you come up short, games are going to happen that way. And there's going to be some days that maybe you're not as good as you could be, and you might be on the right side of the score. But it's about the effort. And it's about learning your lessons from losses, learning your lessons from even mistakes that you might make, and just so that you don't repeat them again. So sports has been such an instrumental part of my life, and I think I have some team members here today, and they know what we talk about is it's team. So I bring all the sports analogies to my business.
So during college and high school, I'm sure that you held a number of jobs, part-time, full-time jobs. And so did they shape your vision for your own company?
They did. I mean, I learned my first job, and I thank my dad for many things that he gave me in my life. And one of them was, I remember being 10 years old and going to him and say, hey, Dad, I got this little bicycle and I need a bigger bike, and the baseball glove is old, and can you buy me this stuff? And he said, son, the greatest lesson I'm gonna teach you is this: get a job. So I said, all right, what do I do, Dad? So he's like, well, your age, and believe it or not, at 10 years old in New York City, I became a paper boy. So that was my first business, and I understood I had the responsibility every day of taking those papers and delivering it to every house, go and collect the money, and right now it's raining outside, and I remember when it rained, I put it inside the door and did the right thing. I remember my mom came home one day from the store, and she said to me, hey, you know what? I met Mrs. McGowan, and you know what she told me? You're the best newspaper boy she ever had. And you know what? that went inside me and that filled me up. And I said, I like that feeling. I like people saying that I'm doing the right thing, that, that I'm successful in that. And that feeling that I learned as a 10-year-old newspaper boy is something that, my team knows that sometimes we get we're a significant sized company, but somebody orders $300 and says, wow, you are the best company that I ever, I work with. And the pride that I have, I don't care the scale of the order, it's the feeling of, or you got the best team and people are so nice in your company, that fills me up with that same pride that Mrs. McGowan gave me when I was 10 years old. But in between, I was a doorman, bellman, and an elevator operator in a Hemsley Hotel in New York City. So I hung out on Park Avenue and off Central Park. I worked at Sears and Roebuck as I installed shocks, batteries, and tires. I was a shoe salesman selling men's shoes. I was a night cleaner in a New York City public school. So we have the cleanest bathrooms, I think, in East Stroudsburg, because I know what a clean bathroom looks like, and if they're not clean, I'll do it myself. You got to put your hand in there and rinse and do it really good. So, but every one of those jobs taught me something, and I would say to people, trying to look at someday of knowing that they want to start a business, every one of those jobs will teach you your experiences you take with you, and they're all additive. And every one of those jobs, I wanted to be the best I could be in those jobs. I wanted to be the best guy installing shocks, batteries, and tires. I wanted to be the best doorman and bellman and elevator operator that hotel ever had. I wanted to, be the best, shoe salesman that Flag Brothers men's shoes ever had. So maybe I wasn't, but I was going to get everything I had in the process.
So when I was growing up, my father always said, we owned a small town grocery store, family-owned business, and he always said, whatever you do, get a college education and get a job with someone else. Do not own your own business. Do not own your own company. It's 24/7. You never get a break. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to start your own company and to be your own boss?
I think it was inside me my whole life, starting maybe with the newspapers. My sister tells me the story. I had the newspaper route, and I probably made like $8 or $9 a week. And my older sister would come to me, and she'd say, "Hey, Steve, can I borrow $2?" And I said, "Sure, but you got to pay me back $3." And I was like 11 years old. I didn't even know what interest was. So I was like, wow, So I think I always had something instilled in me that any job that I ever had, that I looked at the way they were doing it, and I felt I could do better. And I think that it took me until I was 37 years old, which is when I left my career in industry and my career in the corporate world, to kind of get what I felt was the right education, the right base of what I needed to know to be able to do it. It's a scary thing. I can tell you. So, but the one thing I have to say to anybody that ever considers it, fear is the enemy. Okay? In your life, fear is the enemy. And so many people will tell you what you can't do. The reason why they're saying it is they're afraid that you might do it and be successful. Because I can tell you the greatest things that I've done in my life are things that people said I couldn't do. I couldn't steal home. I couldn't major in chemistry when I had high school chemistry. I can't tell you how many people told me I could not leave industry and start my own company. And if I can do it, I'm from just a simple kid from Queens, New York, anybody can. So, but challenge yourself. One life, one chance. Go for it.
So how did you become the owner of Vigon International, and why here in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania?
I knew the gentleman that started Vigon. I did not start the company. Vigon was started by a gentleman by the name of Victor Fulgoni, thus the name of Vigon. He lived in Northwest New Jersey and was looking for a location to start his company with his wife. It was a husband and wife startup, and he found a piece of land on Airport Road. He started his company in his mid-50s, and I knew him from the industry, and I had actually had some product made for me from my company that I work for by him. And he was a chemist, and I was a chemist, and we'd go to Pepe's, and we'd draw benzene rings and carbon molecules and all this other stuff like that. And, a couple times he said, "Hey, Steve, why don't you, I was living at the time in Hackettstown, which is only a half hour or so from here. So why don't you come work for me?" And I was in the corporate world. I got a company car. I'm flying first class around the world. All the things that at the time seemed real important to me. And then as I began reflecting on my life, and now I'm in my 30s, and I have a few dollars in the bank, and he came to me one day and he said, "Steve, you know what? I don't want you to work for me. I'd like to be able to bring you in as a partner and have you buy the company." And I went home that night and I thought about it. I told my wife. She threw a couple of things at me. I had to duck a few times. That everything that we had built up until that point, we were going to risk. And I told her, I said, "Listen, we started with nothing. What's the worst that could happen? We'll start again with nothing." But in the process, I can tell you, Marcia, that I started my career at the age of 22, and the job that I didn't fill me. And I'd go home at night and I'd tell my wife, "This isn't it." And then I would change my position within that company, and I'd go from quality control to process development, and she'd say to me, "Is this it?" And I'm like, "This isn't it." And then a year later, I would change to plant management, and I'd be enthused for a while, and she'd say, "Is this it?" I said, "No, this isn't it." So there was a lot of steps along the way, eventually leading me up to realize that I needed to develop and start my own. And I remember coming home from Vigon and her saying, "Is this it?" And I'm like, "It's it. This is it."
So you now own Vigon, and you're a little bit of a nutcase, just saying. And you have all of these things that I have a lot of fun with that I have now in my office. I have toured his plant, his facility 3 times now. I've taken a personal tour. So I've been around. I always try to check out how many ESU graduates are there, and he continues to hire more and more ESU alumni. So good thing, very good thing. But you have this thing. So he has a lot of fun doing his job. So yeah, that's my favorite. That is my favorite. So let's describe your business philosophy. Why Yippee, and is this really you? Because these all look like you. I mean, all these things. Kind of. This one's a little bit of a redhead.
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to the fact that being an athlete, competitive, kind of looked at the market that we're in, and it was a stale, boring, mainly European-based, Swiss, French, and Perfumer and Flavors magazine, which was the journal for the industry. When I look at the advertisements in there, it was all connotations. It was fruit, flowers, connotations of flavor, fragrance. I want it to be different. If I'm going to create something, I want to be different, because don't be like everybody else. You want to separate yourself. You want to stand apart. It's such a competitive world, because if you're just like everybody else, the competitive nature of your business, you'll be just like everybody else. So I wanted to build the brand. I wanted a brand with a different look and a different feel. And we sat down with an ad agency, and they came up with a different concept. And one of the concepts was big letters across the page, big blank page, "Yippee! A flavor and fragrance company with a new approach." And when we splashed that ad, at the time I was the only salesman in the company, and the only accountant and the only production guy. And I remember about 3 months after we came out with the promotion on that, I went out and I visited some customers down south, and everywhere I went, I knock on the door, "Hi, I'm Steve from Vigon, here to see Bill." And I hear the receptionist say, "Bill, the guy from the Yippee company's here." And I'm like, wow, it's stuck. So once the Yippee thing took off, we just played on it from there. And it's really what Yippee represents for us, for our team. It's our spirit. Yippee is an uplifting, positive word, and that's the spirit of the Vigon team. It's a can-do team. We can make it happen. And sometimes our backs are against the wall, and I'm sure my team is like, "Oh, how are we going to get this done?" And we lost our power for 6 days, but somehow we figured it out, and we had team members that sat, we had no heat in our administration building, no lights. But Yippee spirit gets us through, so.
Okay, so when that quits.
By the way, we also, for golf balls, we have not just regular golf balls, we have sweaty balls. This was an ad that my marketing team came up with. We also have a cell phone holder that looks a little bit like yours truly. It really isn't me. But you gotta have a sense of humor. You gotta have fun, and you know, our motto at Vigon is it is work, but work should be most of the time fun. If it was fun all the time, they wouldn't call it work; they'd call it fun. But it should be looking forward to coming to work every day, and we try to build that environment for people. Empower the people, allow them to be the best that they can be. And that was my dream, coming out of a big company, was creating something that everybody coming every day looked forward to being there, you know, willing to, you know, own it, willing to, you know, come up with new ideas, merit-based, and with merit comes responsibility. With responsibility comes more compensation. So we're all in it together, and it's a positive environment.
And I have to say, being at the Vigon company, they do love going to work every single day. So it is, you do live what you believe, and I think that's important. So you have a lovely wife, Sharon, and 2 children, Steve and Kristen. So you love going to work, and you have all this fun all day, but there has to be work-life balance. So how do you, when your company's a 24-hour operation, how do you find work-life balance?
Well, first of all, my son also works at the company. Yes. So my son is vice president of sales. And I see our, you know, our head of customer service is sitting in the room here, and she knows since Steve Jr.'s come into the company, the number of orders that she's processing and everything else that she's doing has multiplied. And Lori and Michelle that are sitting right there and do an absolutely incredible job for us every day. So, I mean, which has been super to have my son involved in the business and being part of it. My daughter is a school teacher, and she's passionate, you know, as passionate as I am about what she does and in teaching young people, a 3rd grade teacher in Wyckoff, New Jersey, great things in their lives and setting them on their way. My life balance is, you know, I have a home in Cape May. I go down the Jersey Shore. I love the water. I love the ocean. I love to fish. I love to ride my bike. I love to exercise. I'm very disciplined, so just about every night, I'm a little short on my steps today, but I usually do about 20,000 steps a day to try to stay in shape. I'm a pretty avid runner as well. So.
Very good. So, are there any questions at this point? Anybody have anything they wish they could ask? So you can think. What part of Queens did you come from? There you go.
Yeah. I'm a Mets fan and a Jets fan. I see a Jets fan sitting over there. There's so few of us. At one time, the Jets played with the Mets at Shea Stadium. So even though I'm working with the Yankees, and I sat with Mariano Rivera, and I said, Mariano, I'm a Mets fan. And he said, too bad for you. So I said, I know I live in New York with all the Yankee fans and even the Giant fans, and I'm with the teams that don't win all the time. But my therapist is working on that in terms of how I'm able to get through it.
So you are always giving back your time, talent, and treasure. So describe the importance of philanthropy. I know that you give a lot of time to community activities, that your talent, you share it, I know, with ESU, with CFRED, and working with the Innovation Center. Treasure, you're very philanthropic. So describe the importance of philanthropy to you.
Well, you know, Marcia, when people thank me for the things that I do, I'm almost embarrassed when they do that, because I feel with the blessings that I have, it's the least that I should do. And maybe it goes back a little bit to my days at the seminary as well, that I remember talking to a priest one day. And again, within the Catholic religion, it's not this life, it's the next life. And the next life is eternity. And I'm like, Father, you know, you're so blessed that you were called. And you know, if God called you now, certainly the next life, you know, is guaranteed for you. And he turned to me and he said, you know what? He said, Steve, you got to look at this, that God gives each one of us different gifts. And someday we may be judged on not what we did, but what we didn't do. So I think about that a lot, of the things with the blessings that I have, that, you know, when my time is up, have I touched all the lives that I could have? Were there somebody that might have needed a little helping hand that could change their lives the way that my life has? Because think about it, the greatest value that each one of us has, there's nothing more important than the life that you have. And for me, little me, to affect maybe the direction that somebody's life could take in a positive direction, just by, I don't know, a kind word, a direction, spending a half hour, a few dollars, whatever it may be, to make the difference for them. So that they maybe can live their dream the way I've been able to live mine. Because I can tell you that, since I've been able to be, that I'm in this position, every day of my life, I wake up, I'm living my dream. I mean, and I recently had a reunion from my high school, and we all had dreams. And I'm sure you, as from your high school years, and I'm sure you have dreams now as college students. Make those dreams come true, because so many people look back afterwards and live with regrets. And I'm so blessed that I don't have to be that way. And it doesn't come easy, but it's there for the taking. It's hard work, and keep looking for it, but don't give up. It took me 37 years of my life. And it's harder than getting that chemistry degree. It's harder than the journey through school. It's harder than even that a couple of those jobs that you have. But when you get there, man, there's nothing like it. Every single day.
So I think you've already answered the next question. Are you satisfied? I think you clearly are. So looking back,
By the way, I'm always yearning to do better. I'm always looking to be a better person. I'm looking to improve my processes. My team knows that. We're always looking for new tools, better ways. I sat with a couple of super smart people at dinner that they make me passionate about the things that I don't know about cybersecurity or tick repulsion there or tick different things like that. I'm always yearning for more knowledge to improve, to be better, and I'm never satisfied with myself.
So in developing your company, as you look back, what mistakes did you make? What were your regrets, or maybe what would you have done differently?
Coming from the corporate world, I used to see how many times people didn't get the coaching that they needed. And my dream was that at Vigon, if I find somebody that's fairly intelligent and motivated, I'll make it work. And 90% of the time can make it work, but I went in with the impression 100% of the time I can make it work. And I realized that for those 10%, no matter how hard I try, they're not going to get there. And in the process of trying to do it, it was a little demoralizing to the rest of the team, because I would give people chances over and over and over again. A company is a product of its team that comes to work every day. Vigon is successful for one reason, because I have a great team of people. Not me, I have a great team. I just get a chance to coach them and maybe, change the directions and some strategy and some vision. But it's a product of great people that I'm fortunate to be able to find and empower. And not always in the process of doing that do they work out. And that's my disappointment, because the people sometimes that don't work out, they're great people, but they don't fit the discipline, they don't fit what the expectations that the team has of being able to play the position that's required of them. Baseball's got 9 players out there. Every single person has to play their position. If my center fielder's not being able to do it, then unfortunately I have to change them out. So I would say that the mistake I made was maybe trying too hard to make those pieces fit when they didn't fit.
So then what was the toughest decision you ever had to make as a leader in your company?
I think the toughest decision is having, at times, the company outgrow our team member, and then having to try to coach that team member up, and then realize no matter what I do, they're not going to get there, and having to make that decision that they're probably for their own sake, and unfortunately for our sake as well, they're not going to be a fit. And the human side of it is very difficult for me. I've never had a single person ever, and I pride myself on this, ever leave Vigon not knowing that, not having the opportunity to be coached and knowing that they needed to do better and what exactly they needed to do to be successful at the company. And unfortunately, if they can't get there, then a change is made.
But that's speaking from experience, that's very difficult. You always bring somebody in with incredibly high hopes that this is the right person, the right fit, going to help move your company forward. So what was it like the first time you had to terminate an employee? Do you remember that?
I do. And it was actually I had to terminate people at my prior company. That wasn't so hard when I worked for somebody else. But when it's your own and it's personal, I apologized. I mean, and they're like, hey, and I actually just like, no, it's no big deal. I understand, and I saw it come in and all that. I'm like, I'm sorry it didn't work out, I wish it would have, I wish you well, and my HR department's like, why are you apologizing? They didn't show up like, so many days, and I'm like, I don't know, I just, I'm disappointed with that. I mean, one of the mottos that I have now is hire slow and fire fast, because my experience has been, if they don't fit, you'll know it pretty quick, and for their sake and for your own sake, why continue on too long? So you make a change rather than having it drag out.
So what are your plans and goals for the company as you grow into the future? What do you want to become and be?
I mean, our goal is always be the best that we can be in the segment that we serve. And the segment that we serve is in the flavor, fragrance, and cosmetic ingredient market. We've had incredible growth the last couple of years. We're building out quite a bit of infrastructure, actually working on a new project and potential significant new building, hopefully in Smithfield Township, right in the shadows of where we are. So we're kind of building a little campus there. We love the flavor side of the business. There's a lot of regulatory requirements that present difficulty for our competitors, and I think we do a better job in managing that. Cosmetic side is very similar, and then the food industry side is similar to that as well. So continued growth, continued opportunity. We've hired 18 people in the last year, allowing more team members to join us. I mean, the challenge is always, as we grow, to be able to keep that culture, that special team and family type environment that we have. But I love the challenge. I love every day to go into try something new and potentially an acquisition of another company in another part of the world.
So when all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be?
I would say my legacy is somebody that maximized the gift that God gave him, and in the process was so grateful for it, and paid it forward, and encouraged others, to do the same. And when it's all said and done, that maybe, I think of it that the world's like 6 billion years old, and we have like, if we're lucky, 80, 100 years of life to live and walk on the face of it, to maybe leave a big enough mark that when I'm gone, the effect of who I am and what I did might live a little bit longer than otherwise.
So any questions yet from the audience? There we go. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, get a microphone here. We have to get Mary Frances running in heels. Have you ever run in heels?
I've never tried running in heels, Marsha. I'm gonna have to try that.
Just checking.
There was a long pause there.
There was.
I had to think about that, Michael.
Has there ever been a mistake that you made that paid off, like in a bigger way than you thought it would?
A mistake that I made that paid off?
Paid off.
Early on,
I'm sorry?
like an early on mistake that you made that paid off in a big way. Like
I would say the only mistakes that paid off are things that I, characterize as a mistake that I learned from. I think you learn more from mistakes than you do from wins. And once I go down that road, one mistake that I made, I would say that I knew never to do again was I began to make products that my customers made. So again, we make the raw material that a company then formulates, and I have some products that I'll show you, and we'll have them outside. So we make an ingredient that goes into Gatorade. There's a whole bunch of different ingredients that go into make this orange Gatorade. So what I started doing is like, oh, okay, I have all these ingredients. I'll make the ingredients, and I'll sell it to Gatorade, except my customer's selling it to Gatorade. So now my customer says, you're selling me ingredients, and now you're also trying to sell my customer formulations as well. So instead of realizing that you can't sell it twice, I was trying to sell it twice. I'm only an ingredient supplier. I'm not a formulation manufacturer. I let my customer do the formulations for Gatorade. I'll make the orange that goes into the Gatorade, and that's it. So that was a mistake that I made, and a few customers came to me and said, I'm not going to buy from you anymore because you're competing with me. So you can't compete with your customers and be successful. So that was a mistake I made. I backed off, and my son every once in a while says, Dad, we could make that too. And I was like, been down that road, doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah.
2 questions. Your business is growing very quickly. Do you see a family business growing too big to manage?
No. Only because if you have the discipline, which my son is more disciplined than I, and you hire great people around you and have the same kind of disciplined approach. I mean, Mars is a family company, and they bought Wrigley. They're like a $30 billion company now. So I don't see why a family company cannot grow. And I think there's preferences to being a family company from that standpoint of having a central place, a central management team where decisions can be made versus certainly being a publicly traded company where it's a short-term, constant, you got to have the positive numbers this month, or the CEO will be fired versus, hey, we know short-term we may take a step back in order to go forward because we got to make some capital, improvements. We've got to build a new warehouse, whatever the issue may be. So I don't see any disadvantages of that.
So that means you have a lot of children, I guess. Another
You're
question.
never done, right? That's why I try to stay in shape there. I don't know.
Another question.
Talk to my wife, please, about that, though. So, yeah.
You stole home 18 times. How many times have you called out?
Guy has to ask that question, right? Once, but I was safe. Once.
Other questions? Yeah.
Have you worked on developing certain scents to reinforce brand image or memories of brands? And I have a second two-part question. The second question is...
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't.
Have you worked on developing scents for brands to reinforce or create brand identity?
So, to go back on that, we don't invent scents. Okay, we invent the ingredients that then a perfumer would sit down and formulate. So a perfumer might say, hey, listen, Steve, do you have anything like that has a woody character? So we're actually extracting a chemical from nature, or we're synthesizing something that smells like sandalwood or fruity. So we're not on the market brand side of it. Customers are.
My second part,
Go ahead.
Steve, what does a typical workday look like for you from the morning on to the end?
I don't know, Lori, I get in about 7:15, 7:20. I probably do, I start my morning actually, every day about 5:15. Have a bowl of cereal.
Do your hair.
Every one of these pieces of hair are strategically positioned, Marcia, so.
Yes. Got it.
Right. The wind happened to be blowing before I came in here, so.
I love it.
I do emails,
All in the morning.
all in the morning. I get up, my iPad, read a little New York Times. I look at the tweets from Donald Trump. I look at different things like that. Hit the road about 6:30 and arrive to work about 7:15. Lori usually beats me. She's the first one in the office every day. And, probably there till 5:30. Go home, go to the gym, have some dinner, back on the emails, usually crash with my computer on and watching CNN or seeing what Donald Trump is tweeting again. So,
Thank you.
our operation is 24 hours, but we have a director of operations that manages that. So in the old days, I get the phone calls all night. I don't get the phone calls unless there's something significant that's happening. So we're 24 hours, 6 days a week.
Over here on the right.
So you hire a lot of ESU chemistry students. I'm a freshman in chemistry, so
Looking for a job?
not trying
There you
to
go.
look for a job just yet, but since I'm a freshman here, I kind of like to know about the culture of ESU. Why specifically ESU do you pick the chem students?
I mean, I don't think it's specific to ESU. I'm looking for smart, motivated, aggressive people.
I think I
They're-
met him. I met
they're-
him and I said, why aren't you hiring ESU
they're-
grads?
No, but they're
That was
they're-
like 3 years ago, so
right.
we're doing
And
better.
honestly, your program here is an excellent program. We've had some trade of equipment and things like that. You know, an education facility like this in close proximity to where we are, we're certainly going to take advantage of it in any way we can, and I think ESU can take advantage of it, you know, as well. I know, is Danielle here? Danielle, right? So, you know Danielle, right?
club, yep.
So next week she's coming with the chemistry club to visit us. She interned with us as well, and I know she's heading off to her, graduate work as well. So, and we're super proud that she'll always remember how to spell yippee. 3 P's, 3 E's.
3 E's?
3 P's and 3 E's.
Okay. Other questions?
You mentioned you left your corporate job in your 30s, I believe you said?
37.
37. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who already has established a business and looks to keep it going?
So you already have a business.
A friend.
A friend? What advice would I give to him
To a younger entrepreneur that
Well, my advice to anybody who's an entrepreneur at heart is to explore it, to go for it. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, look at like the Silicon Valley model, where a kid will drop out of college and start this company called Facebook and become super famous, or like a Steve Jobs who didn't even go to college. To me, the better path is to learn on somebody else's dime. Go to work for somebody, learn a trade, and that's what I did. Learn a trade, find a niche, find a place that you know you can do better, and don't be held back by, I always like to talk to people, and honestly, for years, people like talking to people, that kind of talked me down from it. I don't have any regrets because I think I needed the 15 years of, post my college career to get where I eventually became, and the opportunity, and I will always be indebted to Victor Fulgoni for believing in me and giving me the opportunity, because he actually underwrote the possibilities for me to buy Vigon. A question I a lot of times get, I'll ask myself this question. So Steve, how did you get involved in the flavor and fragrance business? Anybody interested in because a lot of kids in high school or college will say, Steve, how'd you know you wanted to go into the flavor and fragrance business? I'm like, yeah, I had it all figured out. So here's my story. So I'm at St. Joseph's College. I'm aggressive with my studies. I finished my undergraduate work in 3.5 years, and I had a semester just to finish my undergrad thesis, which was I could do even back then from home. So I got a job. So I started looking for a job, and the only job I could find was selling for a small chemical company out on Long Island. So the guy hires me, and I show up for work the first day, and he said, and I'm thinking I'm selling chemicals. So he said, Steve, you know what? I see something really special in you. I'm going to have you sell a special piece of equipment that measures color. And I said, really? And I walk out of there, and as I walk out, I said, should I tell him? I'm colorblind. So I undertake this of taking the primary colors, and what you would do is you would take a sample of material, and in this case, vanilla extract, and you would, rather than just saying this is lighter or darker, you'd say it's got 2.3 red, 6.7 green, using the primary color. So I'm 3 months in, and I go to this flavor and fragrance company in Brooklyn to sell this piece of equipment. And I'm doing the colors, and I'm really messing it up. And the guy says to me, like, Steve, what's wrong with you? You having trouble today? I mean, are you blind? You added red when you're supposed to add green. And I said, I'm colorblind. And the guy said, what are you doing? So I told him the story. He said, we have a job opening here. Give me your resume. You can't do what you're doing right now. So they hired me at this flavor and fragrance company, and they had a tuition plan, so I went back. I got my master's degree at St. John's University. finished my master's degree, and then look for the next opportunity, because it was a small company. I knew I needed to learn. I needed a bigger company to be able to learn from, and I went to work for what turned out to be the largest flavor and fragrance company in the world. Name of the company is Givaudan. So, but those are the, in life, the dots connect. Okay, and Steve Jobs said this: the dots in life connect. They don't connect forward, so we don't know where we're going. But all the things, if I look back in my life, all those, stealing home, becoming a chemistry major, selling a color measuring instrument when I'm colorblind, finding this flavor and fragrance company in Brooklyn, going back, get my master's degree, working for 13 years for Givaudan and all kinds of different opportunities, and then finding my dream.
So
And
when,
all
you,
that
when,
connects.
when it comes time to hire someone, obviously you don't want to hire a colorblind person to sell colored items, but what are you looking for when you hire someone? What qualities are you looking for?
I'm looking for somebody that is fairly intelligent. I'm looking for somebody who's motivated, wants to make a difference. I'm looking for somebody that obviously likes to have fun, because I think we like to have fun in Vigon. It has a personality. But, most of all, I'm looking for somebody that has a burning desire to do something special, something that, and they want to own, they want to be empowered, they want to, come to work every day and feel like they own it and they can make a difference and come up with new ideas. And it's not the easiest thing, and I say this to people all the time when they're interviewing. If you're that way, you need to come across to when I'm trying to interview that person. And it's so hard sometimes for people to read that, because I know sometimes people are shy in the presentation, and I know underneath maybe this is the one, but meanwhile the person that's more outgoing and they sell themselves better, they get chosen first. But meanwhile they don't have that fire. They present that fire, but underneath really is not that same desire that I thought they had. So if you have that fire and you want to make a difference, you need, when you're presenting yourself, to sell, to come across that way. Not so much sell it, but come prepared. Know everything about the company that you're coming to interview with. Prepare notes on the company. If I hear somebody say, "Hey Steve," at the end of the interview, "Hey Steve, can I ask you a few questions?" Like, this guy cares. And the type of questions that you're asking. What are the opportunities for me to grow? What is the contribution that this company makes? This is a millennial question, but I'm probably more a millennial than I am a baby boomer. What does this company mean to society? Do you have a sustainability program? Are you doing something environmentally sound? What is your safety program like? Do you care about your employees? Questions like that. Those are the kind of people, if they ask a question like that, and do I have a chance to advance? Do you have a tuition program? Because I want to get more education. I want to be better than I was the day before. If you show that interest, you show that desire, that's going to come across to anybody that's interviewing you. You need to be, just like Yippee is different than other companies in our industry, it's a very competitive world. You need to be different than your competition. And your competition, there's a lot of people that have similar type education, similar type capabilities. So you have to come across as somebody that can differentiate yourself that way with your desire and your passion.
Question? Yeah, okay.
I noticed that you said you were running the company 24 hours. Why is that? Would it not be easier to run it with more people during the normal work hours, or is it that what you do?
It's what we do. We're extracting things, and there's a temperature requirement. So once we heat it up to the temperature, there's a requirement, and
Time sensitive.
Yep.
So Steve, name someone famous who's influenced you, and tell me why they influenced you.
I've read a number of books that Steve Jobs, I would have to say, even though his management style was terrible, his vision was spectacular. I think about the iPhone and the simplicity of how that iPhone works and how easy it is. I remember the days when you had the old flip phone and you needed to change to a new phone and you had all your contacts that you had to download. It was so. He had the vision of how do you make it simple. And I look at that and I try to bring that into what we do every day. And our tagline now is passion for simplicity. How do we make it simple for our customers? How do we make it simple for us? How do we make it simple, for our employees to get paid, to punch in, or time clock, or anything related to the process? How do you do it simpler? How do you do it easier? Another guy was the founder of JetBlue, David Nealman. And I remember reading a story that David Nealman, every Friday, would get on the airplane and fly. Their big flight was JFK to Orlando. And he would just experience what the flight attendants experienced and what his customers. So firsthand, he felt it. He saw it, and he could relate it back then to the boardroom. And I think about that, that I go out now with my salesmen, I go out on the shop floor, so that I'm engaged. And and I think about experiences that I've had in places that are not doing so well, and I think, why doesn't a CEO walk into Sears store, or walk in sometimes into my pet peeve was like Home Depot. At one time, Home Depot was the best. And I go into Home Depot and I can't find anybody, the stuff is thrown all over the place, and they're wondering why they're not doing well. Like, just walk in the store and you could see it. Ask somebody. You don't need to hire a consultant and spend, $10 million. Just go experience it yourself. So to me, people like that I hands-on, always, at least engaging with my team members. What's happening? How do you feel about things? What is going on with, how do you feel about the healthcare or anything else that's happening within the company, to make sure that, my job is to build the culture and make sure the people are engaged. That's my job at this point. And,
So Dan Dizio with Philly Pretzel Factory did the Undercover Boss thing, where
Yep.
he had a lot of franchises, and so he went as an undercover boss to discover what it was like, what the other side was like for his employees. So what do you think you would see if you were an undercover boss?
I think probably the same thing that I see now, because they're pretty darn open with me in terms of. I actually was interviewing somebody today, and I brought him out on the shop floor, and I introduced him to our production supervisor, and I said, "Hey, Randy, can you kind of tell him what it's like to work here?" And he said, "It's nuts. It's crazy. He's a pain in the neck. No matter how many orders I get out, he's always asking me for one more. Anything else?" So I love him for it, because there's a sense of humor there to it, but there's also some reality to it too. And I honestly, I feel that people are pretty transparent with
So
me.
what's the most popular product that you produce?
Our most popular product, vanilla in the United States is on the flavor side is super popular. Lemon, we do a fair amount of lemon. Orange always is pretty popular. Cinnamon. I mean, I when they're making, we're packing out some of the cinnamon that we have. I love the smell of cinnamon, and although I told you I smelled like maple syrup when I came over here before. Cocoa as well. So there's, a litany of them there. But vanilla is the most popular flavor in the United States.
What's your favorite
Yeah.
flavor?
I love vanilla.
Vanilla.
Yeah.
Your favorite fragrance? Vanilla.
I like woody, citrusy fragrances. Yeah. Sandal with a little sandalwood in there. I don't know.
Okay, any other questions? Anyone? Another one over here, and then.
Hi, I was wondering, can you explain the differences between running a corporation like Vigon and running a sports franchise like the Rail Riders?
Okay, say that again. Repeat the question.
Difference.
Could you explain the differences between running a corporation like Vigon and running a sports franchise like the Rail Riders?
Oh, okay.
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to the same things. I mean, the only difference is I'm 100% owner of Vigon. There's 30 partners as part of the Rail Riders, and there's one principal partner. So I don't always agree with the direction they'd like to go on some things. I've only been part of the team for 3 years, so slowly I'm getting more say in there. But it's really the same thing. It's like, okay, our job is to put, our requirement is to try to put as many people in the seats there and have them buy as many hamburgers and hot dogs and enjoy the experience of coming to the stadium. We're mixed in terms of our results. It's up in Scranton-Wilkes-Barre. The first month or so, it's Still snowing up there. Don, did it stop snowing in Scranton-Wilkes-Barre yet, or yeah? No? And, you know, unfortunately also, while it's more Yankees down this way and in New Jersey, not so much up there. So, but it's the same thing, is trying to find out what are the dynamics that make people want to buy your product, and then try to solve that equation. And in the midst of that, how do you do it? Sell tickets the simplest, easiest, you know, most constructive way. And get great people, build the culture, all the same. It starts with the people on the team, people on the bus. If you guys want to read a great book, I mean, you probably know it already, Good to Great. I mean, that's my Bible. When I read that book, as I read it, I couldn't put it down because I just saw, it was the only book I ever read that didn't have any pictures that I couldn't put down. Usually I like books with pictures, but it was everything that I had already learned up to that point, but analytical, saying, hey, this is the definition of a great company based on its results. This is a good company, and what's the difference between what each has? And this company really talked about its people, put its people first, built the culture right, had an idea of what their vision was, stayed really steady in that, whereas this other company was changing around, people weren't as important, they downsized when things slowed down a little bit, didn't treat their people so well, and the results weren't as good. So it's a great book to read.
Don.
So I drove through Dunkin' Donuts today, and the person that answered when I drove up was just awesome. And so, if I could, I'll pay you the compliment. I actually thought of you, because that's what you do with your team. So congratulations, because I actually thought of you. You started out talking about no fear. One of your other favorite phrases is it factor. Would you tell the group what it factor is?
Which one?
It factor.
It factor?
You know it when you see it.
Okay.
It's one of the things you taught me.
Do you want me to ask you a different question? The if factor?
The if factor.
It factor.
It factor.
It factor. Did you forget what you said?
I do. I did. Can you help me with that one?
Okay, let's ask you what you're good at. What is it, something that you aren't good at but you'd like to get better at, and that may be remembering it factor?
Golf. Nicole, can you help me? Yeah. No, just I want to be a better person, you know, and I'm always working at that, and I'm never satisfied with who I am, and I never will be. But
Are there any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
I had a double question. First one, in your next career, what position are you going to play for the Mets?
center field.
Okay. Another question, in your line of work, have you encountered issues from time to time with source material and availability, and, you know, what if worldwide cocoa production or cinnamon bark or whatever, are those things that you've had to deal with?
Always. There's always something that's happening somewhere in the world that is a problem. Example, you know, the hurricanes that we had in Florida, the orange crop, about 50% of it got wiped out. So it caused, you know, the pricing of orange to go up. If you didn't secure your stocks for the orange oil, became very difficult to meet your contractual requirements. Vanilla, price of vanilla is through the roof, real vanilla extract. There's issues in Madagascar, weather conditions, political issues. This is a global business. This is global before global became global, because there's spice oils and things like that come from India and come from China and come, you know, orange from Brazil, lemon from Argentina. And, you know, despite maybe the idea of everything should be made in the United States, there's things that just aren't native to the United States on natural materials that are so key to, you know, cinnamon bark that makes our cinnamon for Entenmann's cakes and on the crumbs and things like that. You know, that comes from Sri Lanka and Indonesia. Clove is all from Indonesia. So it's a global world. Anytime there's a hurricane somewhere, I'm okay. You know, my son's texting me at 2 o'clock in the morning like that. Maybe we should take a position on clove or nutmeg or whatever the product may be. So it's very dynamic. You know, China is a big part of the equation. With the tariff issue now, that potentially could be, reciprocal tariffs put on the United States, and nobody wants a trade war because then we have price changes on as a result of tariffs. And
Okay, one more question? Yeah.
I know you.
I know you do so many cool things within the Hackettstown community, within the local community for helping people, and just, do you do that through a foundation or is it through your company directly?
We have what's called the Philanthropy Fund. So the complexities of a foundation are somewhat difficult to manage. So what a Philanthropy Fund is, it is part, kind of like a sub of a foundation. And so you make a donation into this larger foundation that you then, people that have funds within that can then dispense out to 501c3s only. So we use that as a tool to manage that. So my whole family, my son, my daughter, and my wife all have, their desire to give back and be involved in different things that way. So.
And do you have like an employee match program?
We actually do. We encourage our employees to be philanthropic, and what we'll do, we have a program called Vigon Cares, and I know Mary's been a little bit involved in that, so we actually go out with our Vigon Cares t-shirt, and we'll go into the community, and I think we give out turkeys with the Salvation Army, or we've gone to food pantries in the local area. We also will give our employees up to $250 a year for a charity that they would like to participate in and support them on. So, and we encourage that.